This is how you make happy, emotional, and lush type of melodies. Using the major scale usually goes for a more happy feeling. You can easily see what notes the major scale is by going to View Scale Highlighting and then choosing all of these. Major and root note. Then you can find stamps of very common chords. You can use a major seventh. And then it also goes so far as to show you advanced chords where you can really mess around and see like what's going on. But typically I don't like to use stamps because it kind of takes away from the originality of like the process of laying down each individual note. So right now I have something going like this, and I'll kind of break down exactly what I did to get this feeling, and then also the extra steps that I took to add more rhythm and give it more character and feeling. So you don't always have to start at the root note, but for this specific chord I did. A lot of the times I try to go up to the perfect fifth, which is 7 semitones up. That almost always sounds good no matter what scale you're using. So this is the normal major scale. And then literally all I did was just took this root note, put it down 1 octave and up 1 octave. And that fills out more frequencies, which helps to give it more impact and more emotion too, because when you hear something in the low end harmonizing with something in the high end, it just kind of gives that special feeling that you hear in almost every melody. The second chord, I did the same concept with the root note. I took this C sharp down 1 octave and up 1 octave, and I kept the middle 2 notes the same. This will kind of meld together the melody. And to create melodies that actually sound interesting and appealing and aren't just like a copy and paste of a MIDI, really experimenting is how you create unique sounds. In my personal opinion, I feel like you'll feel more accomplished after you do something like that, because you're not just taking something from somewhere else, you're truly making it. And then again, the same concept. I have the E right here, the E 1 octave lower and 1 octave higher. And I do that for a lot of my melodies because it really just fills out all the frequencies, like I said. And this kind of creates tension right here, which is the last note before the end of this progression. And again, I try to use some similar notes from the previous chord, and you don't always have to use a major chord to make a happy melody. And then I changed up this bass note a bit. I put it at A instead of C sharp just because it kind of sounded too repetitive. But it also does match one of the notes in the scale, and that helps to keep it more consistent. And you could see A is used a lot in this, even though it's the root note of D. It doesn't really matter as long as you have something that sounds familiar each time. Now, since this is pretty much a really simple melody, I added rhythm to the next section, the next 4-bar loop. All I did was just bring in the middle note, except for the last chord, this top note. And I made this a C sharp instead of A. It kind of sounds like this. And this is what I like to do because it helps to change up what the listener is hearing, except without having to change the entire melody. So you can add drums maybe over a complex part and then bring it back to a simpler part, maybe during a verse or a bridge. And for the last part, I added filler notes. So that's another common tactic to add more rhythm. You just look for open spaces that you think sounds good in between where the chords are. I left the previous rhythmic pattern here and took this to A3 again. And I added 2 filler notes right here that didn't really match, so I turned them really far down. And then for the last part, I like this section a lot. I basically just took the original pattern, clicked Alt and A, and then arpeggiated it and changed up a few notes, because sometimes the arpeggiator doesn't make it exactly how you want it to sound. So don't be afraid to just go in and change some of the notes after, it's fine. Now this is what it sounds like, and I changed the bass progression pretty dramatically here. I took it, the first 2 are the same, but then I went to B instead of E, and then back up to C sharp, which I mean, it's not really like too much of a difference, but you could definitely tell that it's not the same progression. And then I might take this and layer it over here on a different pattern. And if you're wondering what sound I'm using Expand and then the ukulele, so something that's like very common. And I have a choir vocal in the background turned down quite a lot, but you can still hear it. And then these sparkles, I don't even know, it's like a pad. So yeah, I don't want too much of that because it takes away from the ukulele. And then some strings spiccato. And that just kind of adds more of a hit at the start. So yeah, I mean, aside from that, I just randomized the velocity. clicking Alt and R, which I do all the time, and then enabled swing on the channel rack, which helps to give it more of a realistic feel. Now all I really need to do is just maybe add a few more layers of different instruments, maybe add another top line, and just try to create as many different variations of the same melody so that you have a lot of different options when you're trying to arrange the pattern in the playlist. A lot of modern day hip hop songs will use the same pattern the entire way through the entire song, but there's something about making the melody change because it sounds like it's actually being played, and that's kind of what I like to do, because if it's just the same thing over and over, eventually after 10 listens, even across like multiple days, it's just boring. Like, you don't want to really listen to it anymore. But if you only hear like one part of the pattern once the entire song, then that equates to way less time listening to that pattern versus hearing it 10 times in a row, if you know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, make sure you drop a like, follow if this was helpful. I got more content coming very soon. Peace.